Welcome to Fred Achando Analysis, ladies and gentlemen. As always, I want to say thanks for your continued support. If you are watching for the first time, allow me to request you to subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell so that whenever we do a video like this, YouTube will automatically notify you. Kindly give our videos many likes so that YouTube will recommend them for more viewers and the ratings will go high. Winnie Odinga, who is the daughter to the former Prime Minister and the Azimio leader, is on the United States of America's political black book. Yes, I believe as we speak, the US ambassador to Kenya could be following her movements. I'm saying this because recently, Winnie Odinga made some statements while talking to one of the journalists in Kenya. And she deconstructed the United States and the Western countries. She accused them of perpetuating political, economic, and social interference in Kenya. She said that the United States keeps on selecting a few leaders who they can work with to interfere with the resources of Africa. And she promised that she will liberate Africa from the political machinations from the West. Just take a look at this video because it is going to form the basis of our analysis.
Should you get that IALA slot, what would the next 5 years look like for you?
The next 5 years will be first to build a coalition of the willing. You have all these countries, Western countries, that have for years interfered with Africa. They interfere with our resources, they interfere with our governance. Look at America right now. America is the most divided I have ever seen it. But instead of focusing on themselves, they're interfering on the African continent. And all over the continent, they pick different leaders, different things to put money into. And the result is to leave us, our people, in extreme poverty, offensive poverty, honestly, because they only do it for their own benefit, not for the benefit of the people. So for me, it would be to build a coalition of the willing, people who are like, look, enough of us putting so much emphasis on the political. You can pick all the leaders you want, but we the people, we're going to move on. We're going to move on without you. And the next time you meet us in 15 years from now, you're going to find a smarter African, a more well-equipped African, an African that knows you as good as you think you know us, and an African who is negotiating as part of a team and not you coming into individual countries and reaping and raping the land like you've been doing it. So for me, that's what I would be doing.
It's not the first time I've heard concerns about interference in elections by Western countries, and you specifically singled out the US. In fact, your Raila Odinga actually spoke to it at the height of the election period as well. Do you think there was interference in Kenya?
Absolutely. Kenya is their favorite. Kenya is like their PlayStation. I have in this office I put like virtual reality glasses. Have you ever worn a virtual reality glass? Yeah. That's what Kenya is to them. You just put it and you play, and we know all their tricks. You see, this is what I'm saying by an educated African.
And just to justify a statement you made earlier when you spoke of interference, how specifically do you believe Western countries interfered in the election in Kenya?
What's the scale? How do you want to measure it?
You tell me.
Give me a scale.
1 to 10.
13.
That high is your belief. It's something you can stand in a court of law and testify.
Which court of law? These ones?
For example. For example.
Absolutely. I'll even show you how.
If you listened carefully, Winnie Odinga has cited a few things there. She's saying that we need to unite as Africans and tell our own story, because she's accusing the West of trying to pretend that they understand us more than we understand ourselves. And she's saying that they keep on picking a few leaders against the chagrin of of the will of the people. And I believe, ladies and gentlemen, if you watched that clip carefully, you will realize that by the statement alone, she is no longer a darling of the West. But did you know that Winnie Odinga is not going to be the first person in the Odinga family who is putting herself against the Western rule? Because her grandfather, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, was accused of leaning towards the East. In fact, the founding father of the nation, Jomo Kenyatta, accused Jaramogi Oginga Odinga of trying to topple the government using the Eastern powers, the Russia. And the people who are closer to Kenyatta accused Jaramogi of practicing communism and socialism that was very common in the East, because back then there was capitalism that had been adopted by the West, countries like Britain and America. And the reason why they blacklisted the Jaramogi Oginga Odinga is because, one, Jaramogi had affiliation with the Russians. In fact, if you go to Kisumu, there is a hospital called Jaramogi Oginga Odinga Teaching and Referral Hospital. Originally it was called Russia because Russia gave Jaramogi 140 million for the expansion of that hospital and another 8.5 million Kenyan shillings if you do your research for medical equipment. And so they decided to name it after Russia. The day that founding father Kenyatta came to open that hospital, there was chaos. In fact, that is the famous shooting that happened in Kisumu. I don't want to get there. Jaramogi Oginga schooled his children in the communist nations. His first son, Oburu Odinga, schooled in the communist Soviet was then communist East Germany, because East Germany was practicing communism. And this is the reason why the West blacklisted Jaramogi Oginga Odinga and has never forgiven Jaramogi up to date, because they believed he was practicing communism. And back then there were only two centers of power. There was the West, the USA and Germany. The USSR, before it disintegrated, they were the superpowers. Later the USSR disintegrated into very many countries, very many nations. And that is the reason, ladies and gentlemen, I'm putting it to you that Winnie Odinga is not the first member of that family. It started with Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. In fact, during that time, Tom Mboya was taking African students to go and study in the US. And Jaramogi, on his side, through Lumumba Foundation, was also taking students to study in Russia. And you can understand, in fact, this analysis is coming at the right time, because right now Russia is fighting Ukraine, and you can see the division right in the middle. The West are placing a lot of injunctions to Russia. It started long time ago. In fact, there was a time when Jaramogi Oginga Odinga named Piogama Pinto as the chairman of that foundation. Later, Piogama Pinto was to die, being the first casualty, the first person to suffer political assassination, if you go to the history. And I don't want to go there. After Jaramogi Oginga Odinga went out of politics, came his son, Raila Odinga, a man who has done marvelous things to this country. In fact, fighting for the democratic space was at the center of Raila's politics. He still does it to date. But on several occasions, Raila Odinga has accused the West of robbing him of his victory. The most recent one is the just concluded elections, where he says that some foreign powers colluded to rob him of his victory. Just take a look.
The richest continent in terms of resources is also the poorest. Why? Because true African democrats who believe in Africa and using African wealth for the benefit of the African people have not been able to get power to do so. And the international monopoly capital is not comfortable. The right wing that has always been in collision with the international monopoly capital is always there. We know that. God has told you what has happened here. The right-wing coup d'etat electoral coup d'etat that took place on the 15th of August. You saw the chairman of the Electoral Commission running like a thief to go and announce the results. And the bigger part of the commission saying, no, these are not the results. The international community cannot condemn that kind of action. Why? Because they knew what was happening. Some people have forgotten this. So many of our youth today don't know what happened in this country. They don't know. They call themselves hustlers. Because they don't know. This ignorance, and it actually serves the interests of the regime in power to suppress this historical.
And if you listen to the statements of Raila and that of her daughter, you will realize that they are conjoined. They are talking of a rich Africa full of resources, but they cannot enjoy their resources. Why? Because both the father and son believe that they are foreign powers that come in to select a few leaders and they exploit our resources and then interfere with our democracy, because those leaders who agree to work with them will be given power by force through some political machinations. Recently, I listened to our former president, Uhuru Muigai Kenyatta, in Congo, and he was telling them that without unity, they will not enjoy their resources, because Congo is full of natural resources, minerals, gold and diamond and name it. And Uhuru was telling them that if they keep on fighting, there is no freedom in the power of the gun. And he told them to unite if they wanted to enjoy their resources. And most people believe that there are foreign powers that will always come to use divide and rule, because they cannot exploit resources if people are united. This is the reason I'm telling you that the communist curse did not leave Jaramogi's son, Raila Odinga. And it seems that slowly it is coming to the granddaughter, Winnie Odinga. And I listened to Winnie because you've listened to that video. It seems like Winnie Odinga is preparing herself to follow in the footsteps of the father. The statements and the sentiments are the same. She has coined herself as a person who wants to liberate Africa, and she wants Africa to unite. Let me tell you something, ladies and gentlemen. The day Africa will unite, two things will happen. Number one, Africa will have a very strong currency. You see, today we are using the dollar and the euro. I want to believe, and let someone correct me, that no foreign power will allow Africa to unite. Because when we unite, we have a strong currency and we will weaken the dollar and the euro. And what does it mean? You will be going to the US and it is not a must that you carry a dollar or a euro. Our African currency, a common one, will be used in Europe and in America, so that when you are going to Europe, you have our African currency. And that is something that they will not allow to happen. Number two, our resources are being exploited, but when we sit on a negotiating table, we get a raw deal. Just recently, you saw a leaked document that was tabling how we got into an agreement with the Chinese government for them to build for us the SGR, and we got a raw deal. The day Africa will unite, it means that we will be, and that is what Winnie was saying, we will be negotiating as a team. You see, they have separated us so that we negotiate individually, and there is no power in an individual strength. When people unite, that is when people have power. And we will, and I'm telling you, if Africa unites today, they will be a thorn in the flesh to the European Union and the West. Number three, if Africans unite, ladies and gentlemen, then we will be doing our businesses. There will be bilateral and multilateral trade agreements where we'll be trading with each other. As it is, we cannot trade with each other, because you look at Burkina Faso, you look at Burundi, they are fighting. They keep on fighting among themselves. When people are fighting, manpower goes down because people are running helter-skelter. We have internally displaced persons within the country. Young men, energetic, who are supposed to be working, are running from war, or they are used to fight each other. And so there is no economic gain in that. The net effect is that, ladies and gentlemen, Africa will continue to be poor, because if young men who are energetic, who are supposed to work, are the people who are fighting or are running away from war, then it means Africa will continue to be poor and we will be begging the Western countries. And the communist curse is something that has followed the Jaramogi Oginga Odinga family. Why? Because it seems the West blacklisted Jaramogi Oginga Odinga. And then when the son came, just because he schooled in the Eastern Germany and the brothers schooled in Russia, they have never forgiven them. And now the daughter is coming in, and it seems that the daughter will soon be blacklisted. I was just wondering, I do not know whether the West interfere with elections, but it seems, because I've heard very many people saying it. In fact, Winnie Odinga was saying that she can defend it in a court of justice. Then what does it portend for Africa? If they still come and impose the leaders, if it is true, I'm just saying if it is true, what does it portend for Africa? Do we have absolute democracy? Not at all. Will we have leaders whom we choose, we wake up and vote? Will the power of our vote count? It will not. Does it mean that we are still being colonized? Yes, indirectly. Or do I say directly? Do you agree with the statements of Winnie Odinga? Because from where I sit, I can assure you that Winnie Odinga will have the US to contend with if she contests for a presidency.